there's a reason that they don't have pages on, because if you decide that some page is not important and you take it out and they're numbered, the people just have, it's like, what aren't you telling us?
Yeah.
It must be a secret.
And SODIS stands really simply, solar disinfection. We're providing treatment, biotreatment, which does all kinds of good things, but it doesn't necessarily include a last phase of, it doesn't include disinfection, and we aren't necessarily saying you need to. A lot of places won't do it, don't do it because of the cultural waste. And we talked earlier about people's perceptions about the use of bleach, its safety, its efficacy, it's the ability to even get at it in some places. And in warm climates and sunny climates, there's an alternative way of disinfection that can be very effective, and it's solar disinfection, because from sunlight we get UV, ultraviolet radiation, and ultraviolet radiation is a form of disinfection if you can expose the water to it for a significant period of time. And some brilliant, simple alternative technologies that came up developed and tested a mechanism that allows you to take your water that you've run through your filter, if you thought there was still a risk it needed to be disinfected or you're encouraging disinfection, to put it in either glass bottles or light or clear plastic bottles, put them out in the sun, and I think they call for, is it 8 hours or 8 hours, 6 hours at least? Yeah.
Of direct sunlight.
Of direct sunlight. It has to be indirect sunlight, but there's some caveats. The water is cloudy or turbid, it doesn't work.
Or if it's a cloudy day.
Or if the glass is really cloudy, cracked, or dirty and turbid, it has a reduced effectiveness. Okay? If the day isn't sunny, we're not boiling it, we're not killing it by heat, it's by the direct radiation through the bottles onto the water. All those other things, heating your water, those are all things that can contribute to disinfection, but this technology is about direct solar radiation on the bottles, and in some cases the protocol talks about turning the bottles. So to perform SODIS, the back of the sheet reminds people how to do it. You use a clean PET, which is the kind of plastic that is the most commonly used for housing bottled water in a lot of other third world countries. It's the more brittle kind of plastic. Okay.
It's usually a bottle neck, and it's number 1 or 2 if you're looking for the more.
Yes, it has a neck. It has. They can put screws in it, like threads in it, and it either says 1 or 2 or it says PET on the bottom. Thank you. That's a good way of knowing it. And you want to use clear water. So if it's really turbid, this isn't going to do it. The radiation has to get to the bugs that we're trying to kill. And I use that term as a geologist talks about bugs. And you fill the bottle up. You get all the air out. No air. You want all the air out. And then you put the lid on tightly. You place the bottles in direct sunlight. They actually recommend putting it on a corrugated tin or iron roof so that you get extra reflection. And on a sunny day, expose the bottles from morning to night, or at least 6 hours. And if it's cloudy day, expose the bottles from morning to night for 2 days. And on a rainy day, it doesn't work. So there will obviously be times of year where you're going where this isn't going to work, or you might be in an environment where tree cover or cloud cover make it impractical. They really need the solar radiation and exposure to be effective. And it is one part of a treatment system. It is not recommended as a standalone treatment system at this point by CAWST. Okay? Yeah.
So even if you pre-filter it with just a cloth filter or something to get particulates out, this alone will not provide you with drinking water?
The recommendation for using SODIS, as is described here with the simple application, is after filtration, according to CAWST. That doesn't mean that somebody might not use it that way, but the recommendation for the curriculum that's coming with the filter is to do it after filtration. Take your filtered water and apply it.
After your biofiltered water.
Yeah. Yes.
Even, so
yes.
To try to get that
yes.
fast.
And that's part of a protocol here. Does SODIS provide a level of disinfection? Yes. If you did nothing else, would that be potentially an improvement over the water supply that you're using? Yes. But remember, we're selling, if you will, a package of health and safety. It goes not just one treatment technique, but how to be safe in your house, how to keep it. And so it's important when we're talking, especially to other people that are considering this, to keep it in the context of after. It's a part of it's a finishing process that adds an extra level. And UV is good for viruses. That's one of the nice things that UV is really good for, where some filtration systems are less effective. Filtration, not the biosystem, but the filtration system is less effective on some viruses. And this is an extra way. It's another level of protection that you can provide where you have certain kinds of risks.
Now, if you showed up in an emergency situation just to get started, to have some drinking water, you could do this while you're building the...
You would bring water with you.
One of the things they say that if you were just started, you put your biofilter out and you're just starting,
Oh, yeah, that would work.
you could add soda till your biofilm builds up. And it would significantly reduce that risk.
Occasionally, you cannot find clear bottles.
Yeah.
They'll be blue, and which slows down the process.
It slows it down. If you have a high solar exposure,
So
they still work.
And so the other method is to wrap them in
She says
black.
that doesn't work.
No, it does.
It is pasteurization.
It is, yes.
Okay.
It's pasteurization,
Yeah.
and it does.
Yeah, I mean, that's-
The temperature gets higher.
And that is another one. And what I was saying is that if you have a high degree of solar, if you're really equatorial, it's hot, sunny, and dry, it gets through the blue bottle without too much trouble. But if you're not, if you're high elevation with cloud cover and you're not getting the same amount of solar radiation, the blue bottles, the old cracked up bottles that have a lot of things that deflect the radiation, the solar light, you get less effective treatment. That's why this isn't a standalone treatment. And this is a great picture in the National Geo issue on water about how it works. It's really a phenomenally simple technology to add a layer of protection in the right climate, in the right place. Northwest Washington, probably not the best tool. Yakima, maybe.
When did this edition of...
This would have been the April 2010, and it is available online.
You're getting a lot of good stuff. If you dry it and use it in tea, you're getting a lot of good stuff. The seeds themselves on a large commercial venture can be pressed and used as an oil. And the pressed part you can put in water and it settles the dirt out to the bottom of the water. A lot of micro... Huh?
This is the tree?
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks to be able to do.
It's
Yeah, that's
actually a
the-
tree with the seed
Yeah,
pod.
the hang down.
Yeah.
Those are great cattle
Right, yeah.
fodder, the leaves
I don't
are
think-
cattle of it.
Some of these
Yeah.
are trees.
Thank you.
Like,
And the leaves taste good, they're kind of spicy like horseradish.
So our friend Debbie Thomas takes and dries it and then sells it in the market as a spice to put on food. Because remember what we talked about, if you give it away, they don't think it's important. If you sell it for 2 cents, then it's worth using. So it's not like she's selling it to make money, she's selling it so it has value. Yes,
is the oil that's pressed out of it used?
You can use the oil is the cooking oil.
a cooking oil. If you have a large enough, you know, when you just have a couple trees,
You don't have
you don't have
Oh,
enough.
so, I missed, so after you press it, then the seed,
The leftover you can use to settle.
and that's just a byproduct, but you can sell it so that...
The leaves, the moringa seeds crushed the seeds with Dell's little Leatherman and stuck it in, and within a couple hours it really was like this.
Well, will that work with also mesquite seeds, mesquite pod seeds, or
I don't know,
only
you
the
could,
moringa? Is there something particular?
yeah, it's something particular about the moringa, but you could experiment with other things and see if it helps to settle it.
So as I'm reading, even the fava beans.
Okay.
The fava beans.
On the back they give all.
Fava, yeah.
F-A-V-A.
Yeah, that would work.
Right, yeah, I see.
So the first step, and if the water is really dirty, it doesn't, it is a good step. The second step is filtration, and on the top little circle, they're just using a cloth filter, and there's directions further on, but you just take a sheet, material, and you fold it 3 or 4 times, and then you run the water through, and that obviously gets out the big stuff. In most of the water we've seen, I would not want to drink the water that had just been filtered in that way.
How do you clean the cloth?
Yeah, and then you wash the cloth, and anyway. And it was really interesting because the Africans got off on, well, what if there's dyes in the cloth, and it was really an interesting.
We did that actually, where we were building a water treatment
Yeah.
plant for one of the schools, and they did use Conga cloth, and it's notorious for leaching forever. And so we were filtering out floaties, things that were big so we could see it, but what came out the bottom was blue. And so we said, the Chinese bed sheets work really well, and they're color fast, so they shifted to Chinese bed sheets instead of.
I'm curious if you put.
So it has filtration, the biosand water filter, which is, as Jenny said, what we're really pushing. There's also various ceramic candle filters. And in your book, there's all the information about those. When I make the books for Africa, I don't include it. Because, like Jenny said, what we're pushing is biosand water filters. The other reason is that all of them have a certain degree of end life, and they are fragile. And so moving them over those bumpy roads, and if you haven't been in a third world country, if you think of the worst road you have ever been on, that is probably a moderate road in the third world countries. If you read 3 Cups of Tea, and particularly Stones to Schools, and he talks about taking modem to be able to stand traveling on the roads, that is really where you are in a lot of countries. I mean, it is not. In one place, I just said, I am walking, and I got out and I walked. And poor Dell was so embarrassed. But I was also so car sick, I could hardly stand up. And I just had to walk for a while. But anyway, the roads are not fun. But
I've been there.
There's many times when you think walking will be safer.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And so the third step is the disinfection. And frankly, we don't go there because getting the water through the biosand water filter makes it clean enough that adding a third thing or maybe a second thing is too much.
Yeah,
We
water
want
diminishing return.
It's not in terms of, it's not providing a service to the water, but in terms of if it complicates the operation to the point where people don't do what they're supposed to do,
Yeah.
you defeat the purpose.
Yeah.
So we want to keep it simple and effective.
and in most African countries and probably in Honduras, when they are boiling water, they are using wood from the rainforest. And so one of the ways we earn money for this is we say if you use biosand water filters, you're reducing the amount of wood that is being cut from the rainforest. And that is truly not a selling point, that's the truth.
Yeah.
And so, but sodas doesn't cost any more money. And you know, if someone wants to do it, it's great. If someone has that idea, but again, it's not something. And I don't know about Tanzania, but we have never convinced anyone to put bleach in water.
No.
So,
Might mention to give an impact of the amount of wood it takes. At Friends Theological College, we put one filter in there, and that was handling the water supply for all the students and the faculty. I came back there to visit, and the fellow that had been cutting wood came over and shook my hand and says, "You just saved me 6 hours a day of chopping wood just to boil water." Wow. He says, "Now I have time that I can be in the kitchen." He says,
Wow, that's a lot of wood.
on this page, some pages I take out because I don't think people are going to do it. I've not been successful with this page, but I teach it anyway. It's like I think I'm planting seeds in their mind that if they put fences around their gardens or they fence up their animals, it will decrease the amount of poop that is available. So,
Well, the water.
yeah. So did you follow that?
But you're dealing with a major cultural issue because
Yeah.
where I was, chickens were everywhere. In the house, out of the house, my yard, your yard, there is no distinction. Goats graze on whatever vegetation's available.
The other thing is if you can just get them to understand that their water source, if they could put a fence around it so cows aren't pooping in their exact water source, that's advantageous. But in Kenya, there's an agency that really does that works on protecting water sources. So and they're mostly Kenyan, so we let them handle that part of it. There are always hundreds of ways you can go in any third world country about helpful things. And it's sort of good to think, this is what I'm doing, and not get too sidetracked. Not that the sidetracks aren't important, it's just that you can only put your energies in a few things. And so, I'm not telling you that biosand water filters is the only place to put your energies, but I'm telling you that there's so many things that need to be done that for your own sanity, I feel like you need to say, this is what I'm doing.
And the flip side of that is to remember all of these cultures are as old and as complex and as culturally rich, more culturally rich than ours is.
Yeah.
Which means, however, that when changes are being made, there's more parts of the cultural complex that have to be amended if changes are being made. And this is true whether the change comes indigenously or it comes from the outside. Because again, you know, I've known this from India. I mean, there are ways. I'll remember a village forever in eastern Orissa, very, very poor village, and we were invited to a women's gathering, and they wanted to ask questions, and one of the questions they asked was, well, do you celebrate a lot of holidays? And we said, really, no. And they said, well, you know, we have the federal holidays and the state holidays and the religious holidays and many of all the different religions. And then every Thursday, that we cook food for everyone on the street and basically have a big clap party. I mean, you know, the entire village does this, and they asked if we had that in America, and Ellen said, no, we don't have anything. And they looked at us and said, you must be very, very poor. And then Ellen said, no, just culturally underdeveloped. So you have to remember, you know, not only do you have to respect the cultures that people come from, but appreciate them. I mean, these are they've adapted to their environment in ways that have worked for them. They are culturally developed and in some ways advanced of what we have developed here.
In this page right here, it has a picture of food with a dome over it. And so I usually say, do any of you have a glass dome that you can put over your food? Well, what is the answer?
No, or what are you talking about?
Yeah. So, well, here's the picture. And so I say, what else can you use?
Bowls around.
Okay, bowls. What else?
Even a drop a net.
A net?
Plastic wrap.
What?
Plastic wrap.
Yep.
A large hat.
Okay. Colander. And actually just a piece of napkin or cloth. So the important thing is that if food's going to be out, it's covered. It doesn't really matter what it's covered with. And in some restaurants where I've been drinking something and there's been just a lot of flies, I just take something and put it over my cup because I don't want flies landing on my cup. But again, you know, so as you go through this and you look at these pictures, there's some things that need to be tweaked because it would be hard to draw a piece of cloth over the food because then you couldn't see the food. but I also don't want them thinking I don't have this fancy thing, so I can't do it. You know, almost anything you can Google and find out more information than you ever want to know. On Dell's Yahoo, he has a what do you call it, a flag for biosand water filter. So anytime that shows up anywhere in Yahoo, he gets that email. So, and Samaritan's Purse video that we saw last night has shown up 5,000 times, but that's okay if you want all the other stuff. There's kind of interesting stuff that floats through occasionally.
Vince's mail comes through.
Yeah, and a lot of our friendly water stuff comes through on that, in that folder. So we always do check it. We told you that CAWST.org is where you can get more information than you ever wanted to read. FriendsWhoCare.ca Canada is friends of ours that have done a lot of work in Mexico and India. And they have lists, and they're pretty thorough, and it's just another website that you can check out, and all of this stuff is free. Some of you noticed my bag or purse, and
I have one.
and she has one too. And I'd just like to tell you a few minutes about these bags, because it's a wonderful story. Try to tell it precisely. In Burundi, there is a group called FARS, which works with traumatized people, and their main work is probably through friends, and they talk about forgiveness and healing, and they've done a wonderful work. But the head of it was talking to Patty Federici, and they started talking about quilts. Patty does a quilting ministry through North Seattle Friends Church. And they make quilts for like cancer, people going through cancer treatments. For people that are being traumatized, they have quilts that they give them. And they have a whole quilt blessing ceremony. I mean, it's really cool. And you could talk more to Muriel about it. But anyway, Patty and Carolyn went to Burundi, and they did 3 quilting projects. And they found out that giving a blanket is a traditional thing to do for people that have been, it's a good gift, and for people that have been hurt or someone has died, it was usual for them to give a blanket. The second thing is that if you've been in trauma, you only think with your flight and flight side of your brain, and quilting puts both pieces together. So it's very therapeutic for people that have been in trauma. And the third thing is that the women who, because of I don't know, children in the room, but because of things that had been done to them, were not accepted in the community. And when they went back with a sewing machine and a skill, they became esteemed members of the community. And so they do bring, so in their quilting workshops, they make a quilt for themselves and a quilt to give away. And then Patty has brought some quilts back, but they're expensive. And so she has taught them how to make these bags. And the bags are, they could be shopping bags. I use mine for a purse. But they have a flap in them like this, and they're completely reversible. And they are usually these blue colors, or, hold up yours, these kind of orangey yellow bright colors. And if you would like a bag, they're $20 if you're around Seattle. But if you want them shipped to you, $25, and you can just go to North Seattle Friends Church and somehow Stone Stoop, anyway, you can order them from there. And we will warn Patty that there might be some. Okay. friendlywaterfortheworld.com is this group's website. And waterforafrica@gmail is Dell's and mine email. CAWST says the hardest place to put biofilm water filters is where your water looks clear. If your water looks good. See, now if you're drinking water like this, and you have water like this, most people believe that the clear water is better for you. And they claim for rightful reasons that if the water looks clear, it's very, very hard to convince people that there are microbes in there. And so if you were going to a place like that, it probably would be very advantageous to take a microscope or to take slides or to do something like that. But we have never been any place where the water has looked clear.
Two
Yes.
things. Where we did talk in the classroom setting when we were talking to kids, and we used English classes as a forum to talk about all kinds of things. We talked about what was in the water and what was clean, and we showed them some water that was transparent and some that wasn't, and we did have access to some lenses to go look at things and some microscopes. But to be honest, I can't imagine trying to get from point A to point B with a functioning microscope if I didn't need it to put in a filter system or something else. It's just a problem in terms of logistics. However, kids were always interested in what we could show them.
Oh, yeah.
But in the water filter class, I would imagine they just really wanted to know if it worked and what is another metric that could show me that if this was working, how it worked.
Actually, if they don't think they need it, then it's
Very
pretty
hard to
hard.
convince them.
Yeah, so then it's better just to move on and do it someplace else. I mean, I know that sounds harsh.
Or their tummies or.
But yeah. But like I said in Burundi, when I said, is your water okay? And they all said yes, I thought, I mean, that was my first reaction. Well, let's just pack up and leave. And then luckily I asked the second question. Have you been sick from drinking your water? And they all had been sick.
Did they recognize that being sick was from the water?
Somehow they accepted that. Because my question was, well, have you been sick from your water lately? And they all said, either our children or, yeah, they all knew someone at that point right then that was sick with diarrhea.
But they admitted it was from the water.
Well, they at least knew that diarrhea, and then when we talked about that diarrhea and that kind of stuff comes from water, it wasn't a big leap of faith. There's a thing here about taking care of your latrine, and Dell has some new plans for a composting latrine that occasionally people are very interested in. I must say that this is one little path that we don't build latrines, but if they're interested, we give them the information about how to do it. And hopefully before this is over, we'll give you the information. But basically, this picture of a latrine is better than most people have. But you have a pit and some sort of toilet on top. The thing that is really good is if you can get a pipe coming up from the pit and then put a screen on top of the pipe. What happens is the flies see the light and come up, and they can't get out, and they only have a fly brain, so they don't fly down, so they die. So this reduces the whole fly population.